I'm going to say something that might sting a little, but you need to hear it. If you have $1,000 in 2026 and you think that money is safe just because it's sitting there, you're already in trouble. $1,000 isn't small money, but it is fragile. And if you treat it casually, it doesn't fade away slowly. It vanishes. Fast. Like magic. Except there's no applause at the end. I've watched this happen more times than I can count. People think $1,000 is just a warm-up round, a practice chip, something you can toss around, experiment with, learn from. That's nonsense. That thinking is exactly how money dies young. In 2026, money doesn't forgive ignorance. It punishes it. Immediately. Here's what's different now. Inflation isn't a headline anymore. It's a tax you pay every single day. Interest rates are no longer a joke. They're real, they're sharp, and they cut both ways. And the era of cheap money swooping in to rescue bad decisions, that era is over. No one is coming to save you. Not central banks, not markets, not luck. If you mess this up, you own it. People ask me, Kevin, it's just $1,000. How bad can it be? That question tells me everything, because when your capital is small, the margin for error isn't small. It's zero. One emotional decision, one lazy assumption, one piece of advice from someone who's never built anything real. And suddenly that $1,000 is a story you tell yourself about what you used to have. I've lived through crashes, bubbles, manias, and moments where everyone thought they were a genius. I'll let you in on a secret. Most of them weren't. They were just lucky for a while. And luck is a terrible strategy, especially when you don't have much to lose. So let me reframe the question for you right now, because this is where people go wrong. The question is not, how do I turn $1,000 into something big? That's how amateurs think. The real question, the only question that matters at the beginning is this: how do I make sure this $1,000 doesn't die early? Because if it survives, if it stays alive, time can do incredible things. But if it doesn't, the conversation is over. And in 2026, that conversation ends a lot faster than people expect. Let me clear up the most dangerous lie people tell themselves when they start with a small amount of money. I hear it all the time. It's only $1,000. I can experiment. I can take a shot. If it doesn't work, no big deal. That sentence has destroyed more accounts than any market crash I've ever lived through. And I've lived through plenty. The idea that small capital gives you permission to be reckless is backwards. Completely backwards. When your capital is small, you don't have flexibility. You don't have a safety net. You don't have a second act waiting backstage. You have one ticket, one seat, and one chance to stay in the room. That's it. Treating $1,000 like casino money isn't confidence. It's denial with better branding. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Big money can survive mistakes. I've made them. I've seen others make them. When you have scale, you can be wrong and still recover. You can rebalance. You can wait. You can absorb the hit. When you don't have scale, being wrong doesn't teach you a lesson. It removes you from the game. Permanently. That's the difference no one likes to talk about. People love to say, "I'll learn by doing." Fine. But understand what you're paying for that education, because when you only have $1,000, tuition is expensive. One emotional move, one overconfident bet, one moment where you confuse excitement with intelligence, and suddenly you're not learning anymore. You're explaining. Explaining to yourself why it didn't work, why it was bad luck, why next time will be different. There is no next time if the capital is gone. So I don't approach $1,000 with creativity. I approach it with discipline. I don't ask how clever I can be. I ask how boring I can afford to be. Because boring keeps you alive. And alive is where opportunity lives. This is where my framework comes in, and it never changes no matter the number. First, protect the capital. If it can be permanently damaged, I'm not interested. Second, demand cash flow. Money that pays you teaches patience. Third, reinvest relentlessly. Compounding doesn't work if you keep interrupting it. Fourth, control taxes. What you keep matters more than what you make. And finally, control your behavior, because the market doesn't beat people. People beat themselves. If this sounds restrictive, good. It's supposed to be. Structure isn't a prison, it's armor. And when you're starting, small armor matters more than ambition. Most people don't fail because they lacked opportunity. They fail because they treated their first $1,000 like it was disposable. It isn't. It's the foundation. And foundations don't forgive sloppiness. Let me lock this in right now, because if you miss this, nothing else I say after this will matter. Once the capital is gone, the game is over. Not paused, not bruised, over. There is no comeback story when you start with $1,000. There is no heroic recovery montage. There is no "I'll make it back on the next trade." That's a fantasy people tell themselves right before the screen goes dark. I need you to understand the math, because math doesn't care how confident you feel. If you lose 50% of your money, you don't need a 50% gain to recover. You need 100% gain just to get back to zero. Lose 75%, and now you need a 300% return. That's not investing. That's begging probability to save you. And probability is a very cold partner. It doesn't do favors. This is where people confuse activity with intelligence. They think clicking buttons, watching charts, making trades means they're in the game. No. Being in the game means staying alive long enough for time to work for you. Investing is survival. Gambling is a countdown clock. One keeps you in the room. The other is designed to escort you out politely and take your money with it. I've seen people blow up $1,000 in options because the leverage looked exciting. I've seen them chase meme stocks because the price looked cheap and the comments were loud. Cheap doesn't mean safe. Loud doesn't mean smart. And leverage when you are small isn't a tool. It's a weapon pointed at your own foot. You don't feel the damage right away. Then suddenly you're limping, wondering what happened. Here's the mistake I see over and over again. Someone looks at $1,000 and asks, "How fast can this grow?" That's the wrong question. That question gets you killed. I ask something very different. I ask, how do I make sure this never goes to zero? Because once it survives, once it stays intact, time becomes your ally. And time is undefeated when you respect it. I didn't build anything by swinging for the fences early. That's a myth people love because it sounds dramatic. The truth is much less exciting. I stayed in the game. I avoided stupid losses. I said no far more often than I said yes. Markets don't reward heroes. Heroes burn out. Markets reward survivors. Survivors compound. When I hear someone say, "I'll just risk it," it's only 1,000. I already know how that story ends. One emotional trade. One moment of overconfidence. One belief that this time is different. And suddenly that $1,000 turns into a lesson you paid for instead of an asset you built. Education is fine, but not when the price of tuition is permanent elimination. So this rule is not flexible. It's not situational. It's not something you bend when you feel lucky. Never put your $1,000 into anything that can permanently impair it. If you don't understand how it makes money, stay away. If the downside is unlimited, walk. If the upside depends on perfect timing, run. I don't invest emotionally. I invest mathematically. And math says preservation beats prediction every single time. If this feels restrictive, good. Survival always is. But survival is the only thing that gives you a future. And without that $1,000 alive, there is no future conversation to have. Now we get to the behavior that kills more small accounts than recessions, crashes, or bad luck ever could. Speculation. And let me be very clear, speculation is not investing with a personality. It's a completely different activity. Investing is about building something that can survive. Speculation is about excitement, speed, and stories are expensive. I hear this phrase all the time. One trade can change my life. No. One trade can end your life as an investor. That sentence should come with a warning label. People say it with hope in their voice, like they're about to discover a shortcut the rest of the world somehow missed. They haven't. They're just volunteering their capital for entertainment. Let's talk reality, not hype. The majority of traders lose money. Not some, most. Short-dated options especially have negative probability baked right into them. Time decay is working against you. Volatility is working against you. And on the other side of that trade are professionals with better data, faster execution, and fewer emotions. You're not David versus Goliath. You're David without a slingshot standing in traffic. I've watched this movie play out over and over again. Someone turns $1,000 into $2,500 on a lucky trade. And instead of protecting the win, they feel invincible. They increase position size. They increase risk. They tell themselves they've cracked the code. Then one bad move wipes out everything. The profits, the original capital, the confidence. That's not bad luck. That's predictable behavior. Casinos are built on it. Speculation feels good because it replaces discipline with dopamine. It gives you the illusion of progress without the inconvenience of patience. You get excitement screenshots and stories to tell your friends. What you don't get is durability. And durability is the only thing that matters when you start small. Here's a rule I live by, and you should adopt immediately. If an investment requires perfect timing, you don't belong in it. If your plan depends on being right fast, you're not building wealth. You're auditioning for regret. The market doesn't reward urgency, it punishes it. People confuse movement with momentum. Watching prices tick up and down feels productive. It isn't. It's noise. Real momentum comes from repeatable behavior that doesn't depend on being clever. That's why speculation turns investing into entertainment. And entertainment always costs money. Yours. When you only have $1,000, you do not have room for lottery behavior. You don't get multiple lives. You don't get to try again with the same capital. Remove speculation from the equation, and something interesting happens. Your stress drops. Your decisions slow down. And suddenly you're not trying to be a hero anymore. You're trying to survive. And survival, boring as it sounds, is where every real fortune actually begins. This is the part where most people lose interest, and that's exactly why it matters. Because the real engine of wealth isn't exciting. It doesn't come with adrenaline. It doesn't give you stories to brag about at dinner. It works quietly, patiently, and relentlessly. And that engine is cash flow fed by discipline multiplied by time. People love to talk about compounding like it's some kind of financial magic trick, as if money just wakes up one day and decides to multiply out of generosity. That's nonsense. Compounding is not magic, it's math with good behavior. And here's the truth no one likes to say out loud. You cannot compound hope. You cannot compound hype. You can only compound money that actually shows up consistently whether you're excited or bored. When you start with $1,000, this matters even more. Watching prices go up and down feels productive, but it isn't. It's noise. I don't build wealth staring at screens. I build it by owning things that pay me for waiting. Cash flow turns patience into a strategy. Dividends, interest distributions, even small amounts, especially small amounts, because they create a habit. And habits are more powerful than ideas. Here's where most beginners sabotage themselves. They earn a little cash flow, and they treat it like a reward. They spend it. They celebrate it. They interrupt the very process they claim they want. Reinvestment is not optional. It's the engine. Every dollar that comes in goes back to work. No exceptions, no timing, no cleverness. Compounding only works if you stop getting in its way. I've seen this play out over decades. Two people start with the same amount. One chases price, the other reinvests income. Year 1, they look the same. Year 3, still boring. Year 5, nothing impressive. Then, somewhere around year 10, the gap opens up. Quietly. Brutally. Not because one was smarter, but because one respected the process, and the other kept interrupting it out of boredom. And boredom is expensive. People don't panic at the beginning. They panic later when progress feels slow. That's when they do something stupid. They chase a hot idea. They sell too early. They abandon the system because it doesn't feel exciting anymore. That's how compounding dies, not in a crash, but in a moment of impatience. Now let's talk about the most boring subject in investing, and one of the most important: taxes. Taxes are the silent killer. They don't show up as a dramatic loss. They show up as a quiet drag that eats your future year after year. And most people don't even notice until it's too late. Every dollar you lose unnecessarily to taxes is a dollar that never gets the chance to compound. Not this year, not next year, ever. And when that happens repeatedly, the damage isn't linear. It's massive. You look back 10 or 20 years later and wonder why your portfolio isn't bigger. This is why. People obsess over headline returns. I don't care about headline returns. I care about what I keep. A 10% return you keep beats a 15% return that gets chewed up by taxes every single time. That's not a theory, that's reality. Turnover matters. Structure matters. Timing matters. If your plan involves constant buying and selling, congratulations. You're not compounding, you're feeding the system. I think about taxes before I invest, not after. I think about where income lands. I think about how long I want to own something. I think about after-tax, after-fee results. That's not flashy. No one makes movies about it. But it works. And it works especially well when you start small, because inefficiency hurts more when your base is limited. This is where people misunderstand discipline. They think discipline is restrictive. It isn't. It's protective. Cash flow gives you consistency. Reinvestment gives you momentum. Tax efficiency gives you durability. Time does the rest. You don't need brilliance here. You need restraint. The irony is that everyone is chasing excitement while the real money is built in silence, slowly, predictably, almost invisibly. Cash flow compounds. Taxes compound too, but in the wrong direction if you ignore them. So you choose. You either build a system that works while you sleep, or you stay busy, entertained, and frustrated. This is the unsexy part of wealth, and it's also the part that actually works. At this point, the enemy is no longer the market. It's you, and I say that with respect because I've been there. Most portfolios don't die because of bad information. They die because of bad behavior at exactly the wrong moment. Panic, boredom, overconfidence, impatience. Those are the real risks, and none of them show up on a price chart. When you only have $1,000, every emotion is amplified. Every dip feels personal. Every gain feels like proof you're a genius. That emotional roller coaster is precisely what the market feeds on. I don't invest based on feelings. I invest based on rules because rules don't get excited, and they don't get scared. Most people think action is skill. It isn't. Doing nothing is a skill, and it's one of the hardest skills to learn. I've watched people destroy perfectly good plans because they were bored. Boredom makes people reckless. It convinces them something must be done, something must be changed, something must be improved right now. That urge is expensive. The market transfers money from the impatient to the patient quietly and relentlessly. You don't need to outsmart anyone. You need to outlast them. So when I think about deploying $1,000, I'm not trying to impress anyone. I'm not trying to turn it into a headline. I'm trying to build a foundation. That means every dollar has a job. First, survivability. I want exposure to things that can endure bad markets. Durability beats excitement every time. Second, income. I want that money to start paying me something even if it's small. Income creates discipline. Third, reinvestment. Everything earned goes back to work. No exceptions. Fourth, risk control. No single decision should be able to ruin me. And finally, low costs and low taxes, because leakage kills momentum. This isn't about being clever. It's about being consistent. This $1,000 is not about today. It's about building a repeatable system you can trust as more money comes in. Raises, side income, bonuses. All of it eventually flows into a process you already understand. That's how real investors think. They don't reinvent themselves with every market move. They follow a plan when it's boring and when it's uncomfortable. Let me leave you with this, because this is what I want burned into your thinking. $1,000 is not small money. Ignorance is expensive. Bad behavior is expensive. Impatience is devastating. If you protect your capital, avoid speculation, generate cash flow, reinvest intelligently, control taxes, and control yourself, you are already ahead of most people. Not because you're smarter, but because you're disciplined. You don't need luck. You don't need hype. You don't need a miracle trade. You need a plan and the discipline to follow it when emotions try to take over. That's how $1,000 stops being fragile.